It's been a while, and we're back. It's Channel Weird. I'm Clyde Lewis, and I have never, that I know of, in the history of both doing the show Ground Zero and doing this show, I don't think I've ever interviewed someone who I would consider to be a co-patriot or a person who I would call a Fortean. When people always ask me, they say, well, what do you believe? I say, well, I'm a Fortean. And they say, well, what is that? And I say, well, I am like Charles Fort, and they still look at me like I'm a dummy. I don't know what I'm talking about here, and I think it's important that my guest today, Smiles Lewis, is with us. He's I'd say he's a scholar in this stuff, certainly a scholar in this type of material, and like I say, I think it's an honor to be around someone who is a fellow Fortean and a person who enjoys anomalies. That's the whole point of a Fortean. Charles Fort was one of the original. He would write books. I think he did a book called The Book of the Damned, and he wrote a bunch of other books about how the planet is like some strange pantry, and where everybody else's property, and that there are aliens and anomalies and beings in the skies, and anything from rains of frogs to fish. And so, something that fascinated me. Smiles, come on, and it's good to have you on. And so tell us about, maybe you can do the explanation better, because you're pretty much, you've been at this since you were a kid. So let's talk about what it means to be a Fortean.
Well, so I will start by saying I had the pleasure of seeing cyberpunk author William Gibson at a book signing a couple of years in a row. And at one of them, he dropped so many hints in his books, his fiction work, his cyberpunk fiction books, that he was a Fortean. I just finally asked, "Are you now, or have you ever been a Fortean?" And of course, he did not lie. He said, "Yes, of course, I've been a Fortean since childhood." And then he said, for those of you who don't know, a Fortean is somebody named after Charles Fort, who was like the Fox Mulder of the X-Files long before the X-Files existed. Somebody who was just fascinated by the strange, the mysterious, the unknown, all those anomalies that science says, no, that can't be, so it isn't. And a Fortean, in my estimation, tends to be almost what most believers would call a debunker or a hardened skeptic, but who is obsessed as much as the believers are in those subjects. Right. And while I certainly have tons of beliefs that I will admittedly say, this is my belief and speculation based on my attempted scholarly reasoning, ultimately, I don't know. Nobody knows. Science is about intermediatism. It is about the best guess, the best understanding we can assess from the given data, including the anomalous data, the outliers, the things that don't fit our models. And so that, to me, is a Fortean, somebody who has an obsession with these subjects. So you off air mentioned Fortean Times, which is a phenomenal, long published journal of strange phenomena. And yeah, it's almost a voyeuristic aspect for some of us.
Right. It's amazing. I mean, like you say, you don't want to, I mean, I don't see my Forteanism as being a debunking thing. I see it as, I'm a skeptic, but then again, I have been taught, or I have been educated, or I have been schooled. And then when you end up being educated, schooled, and everything, it just opens new doors for you. It's like Robert Anton Wilson when he talked about Chapel Perilous. You're like, yes. Oh my gosh, I'm either going to lose my mind, I'm going to be an atheist, or it's just, you go through all these things in your mind as to whether or not, all of this is real. And that's what Chapel Perilous is. It's the idea that the world is so uncertain. The only certainty is uncertainty. And now it's even more complicated, because it's not only uncertainty, but there are a lot of distractions and contradictions now. So they've added to being a Fortean where you're distracted by some things, like, the blurry picture of Bigfoot every once in a while. And then, of course, there's a contradiction that you're dealing with. And so you're in doublethink half the time. So that's the frustration I think we face as those who investigate the anomalies and the paranormal. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. And, as often get labeled a believer as I get labeled a skeptic.
Right.
I consider myself a militant agnostic. I don't know, and neither do you. And at the same time,
That's so fortunate of you to say that, by the way.
well, we
I could be kidding, but I'm very serious about what I kid about, right?
yes, and that's like Robert Anton Wilson. He is
Exactly.
he's somebody who should not be forgotten, just like Charles Fort should not be forgotten. He is somebody who surfed the waves of the weirdness, and was fascinated by it and experienced it firsthand. Had, like his friends and others, Philip K. Dick, Timothy Leary, all these amazing counterculture figures who, at one time or another, had experiences that led them to believe that they were being contacted by some kind of alien other.
Right.
And Philip K. Dick and Robert Anton Wilson and so many others, you know, restrained themselves from falling prey to one particular belief system, one reality tunnel, as Robert Anton Wilson said. And I think that's really important in navigating these surrealities, whether they be parapolitical or paranormal. And I was reading your bio again, refreshing my memory on all the amazing things that you've done in your life, and the fact that parapolitical was used in it really made me happy, because that's another one of these terms that should not be forgotten, and coined by deep parapolitical writer Peter Dale Scott.
Parapolitical is I think the very important way of saying I'm a conspiracy theorist, but only on Saturdays. Pretty much.
Right.
It's kind of like, I haven't written a conspiracy theory, so I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a person who loves to examine parapolitical, evil and the weird and I guess you could call it the synarchy that exists hidden in government, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah, and again, off air mentioning the Stargate conspiracy, it's the synarchist that is one of those earliest terms to describe the real the reality of the powers that be, the people who have decided that it's best to govern from the shadows, and that the plebes and the masses don't need to know the truth. We can tell them what they should believe, and we'll direct humanity towards what we think is its ultimate best aim.
It's an approximation game, is what it is. It's what they're trying to do. They have an approximation goal, and then for some reason, through I guess you call it consensus psychosis, they're able to push us in a direction. And like I said a long time ago, back in 1995 when I first did Ground Zero, I was crazy Clyde. Now I'm pop culture Clyde, which is weird. Do you ever find yourself being more pop culture than weird?
Yeah, especially when I became obsessed with the slap. And that's all I'm going to say.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I was too. And everybody was saying, well, it's not important, but these things are important. People need to understand that there is this hidden, I don't know how to put it. There's this hidden meaning in everything. We're just reading too much into everything. No, things are done for a reason. Things are planned for a reason. You have the reality, you have the cause, you have the effect, and then even if you want to get more Fortean, you have retro causality, where you're getting sick on the bad salad you ate like 2 days ahead in the future. So I mean, it's hard to try and explain this type of thought unless you're a Fortean.
Yeah, and to some degree, this reminds me of synchromysticism, a kind of a way of conceptualizing and discussing the synchronicities that we see in the world that mirror mythology and folklore, and that, if anything, seem to be writing our own history. And just like in conspiracy theory, you have people that take everything absolutely literally, do not ever say that they're speculating or that this is possible, but that they're not sure. With the synchromystics, you have some who are absolutely conspiracy theorist oriented, who take their interpretations of what they're seeing as gospel, and then you have others who just are more like a Jungian, Carl Jung, the psychotherapist, taking it in terms of the old idea of synchronicity, the idea of getting a meaningful coincidence that's based upon an inner state of the observer and what is being observed out in the real world. And I'm quick to say I don't know. When I see the kinds of synchronicities that do imply that something is being made to happen in the real world, that this is a distraction from this other thing,
Right.
I see those kind of things all the time, and even my friends and family who aren't conspiratorial like me will say, the same things, like, this sure does seem like a distraction from this more important thing that's going on right now.
What they're really
But
saying is that it's a distraction for what I think is important. Because, that's just it. People like you and me, we look at the little things and we so, I mean, it's like because we know something about the cosmic trickster. I mean, what are your thoughts on the cosmic trickster?
well, this is where I think two great exemplars of my belief systems are UFO researcher Jacques Vallée
Uh-huh.
and modern psychedelic prophet Terence McKenna. Vallée, is somebody who has informed my ideas about the true nature of the true UFO phenomenon. And that is that there is some kind of true UFO phenomenon that does seem to represent some kind of non-human or alien other intelligence interacting with us. And he speculated about the idea of a control system that if he looked at the waves of UFO sightings over time, it seemed less like a classic alien invasion or extraterrestrial hypothesis explanation, and it looked more like a schedule of sociological reinforcement and control towards what? Some kind of directing us towards cultural ways of thinking about our world and about the nature of the fabric of reality. And at the same time, he warned about the abuse by human agencies of this understanding of that phenomena in the form of, major religions, corporations, governments, militaries, esoteric groups. And on the other hand, you have somebody like Terence McKenna, who was very well steeped in all of these same bits of information, and definitely also believed that there was some kind of alien other intelligence interacting with us. But he really poo-pooed Vallée's paranoid ideas about, there being forces that would be able to control and manipulate this. And he ultimately was kind of like, no, the nature of reality is too random and chaotic for the powers that be to really actually exert any significant control. I don't think he was denying that there were conspiracies, cover-ups, and covert operations. To the contrary, I think he very much knew those things were going on. And some people, of course, think that he and Vallée and others are all part of that. But this dichotomy here, I think, really is a good way of balanced perspective on looking at these things. It
I was
really. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting because I've always wondered about Vallée, and I've interviewed him before and talked with him, and there seems to be this double think, and I always tell people I like to separate my peas from my potatoes, but there's this double think with regard to aliens being spiritual beings, or perhaps a UFO abduction experience being like a spiritual experience. I'd like to, like I said, I like to separate those two. And the reason why is because I just don't think something like this is easily put into a box. I mean, when you take the complexities of the interaction between aliens and humans, I've always felt, having a religious background, that demons and angels were spiritual beings, and now they're taking on the form of aliens. They're taking the form of fallen angels. I mean, you're hearing all of the tropes being put out by, born again ministers. And while I can entertain the idea that they're demons or fallen angels, I tend to not want to. And the reason why is because I don't want somebody, when we find a biological or synthetic alien being out there, that we're going to immediately demonize it. I find that uncomfortable.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I do find very compelling the idea that John Keel put forth, that what we are interacting with are what he called ultra terrestrials, or what
Yes.
Mac Toney's described as crypto terrestrials. This idea that there is a civilization or an ecology of these intelligences and entities that have been here as long as we have, perhaps longer, and maybe they're a bit jealous or angry at us for doing what we've done in terms of spreading across the globe and whatnot.
Right.
And I think obviously that can exactly be interpreted negatively in terms of some kind of spiritual beings inhabiting this. But I think of it, like I say, as an ecology, that there is an ecosystem that we are a part of,
Right.
that they are a part of. And it's very unclear as to the nature of our relationship. And this is one of the most salient questions about the UFO encounter is who's in control of the imagery, because clearly the imagery has changed over time, and it's evolved with us as we've evolved our ability to conceptualize because of changing technology and our changing belief systems. And so, as you say, yes, we now see them and talk of them in terms of our science fiction interpretive mechanisms, and that's convenient, but it's just how it's of our own time. We're still stuck in our own box.
Exactly.
And it to me, from everything I've seen, the experience of encountering something that is so truly alien is going to be alienating and completely confusing to the perceptual systems, the filters.
I agree with you. We need to take a break, but I agree with you on that. And Smiles Lewis is with us. Very important discussion today, I say, because it's always nice to be able to talk with someone who is well versed in the backgrounds of why we believe what we believe and why we investigate these things. A lot of, I guess you say, introspect thought with regard to why we behave the way we do and who is in charge, really, who is there watching us from a distance and controlling everything. Today on Channel Weird, we'll be back with more with Smiles Lewis right here. Don't go away. On the phone with me is Ronnie from getthetea.com. Hey, Ronnie, it is the tea that makes you go, I know this because I use it. My favorite is pomegranate. What kind of flavors are there to choose from with this wonderful tea?
You can do pomegranate. You can do just the straight, which is real good. And also we have a mint, a peppermint. People really love that one too. And we have a couple new flavors on the way, which I will not discuss yet, but they're coming.
A lot of people don't know that peppermint is a very, very good supplement to keep the stomach happy. It relaxes the intestines, and once again, it makes you feel better because it allows them to move around and get that stuff out of you, that bad stuff out of you.
Absolutely. This is a digest mover. So people have a hard time digesting stuff, or you get something stuck, or maybe you're a real heavy meat eater. The tea is wonderful. That's why it's taglined, the tea that makes you go.
If I want my life to change and get the tea, where do I go to get it?
Getthetea.com. That's getthetea, TEA.com.
Fantastic.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
It's all over the news, food shortages and scarcity in the supply chain, and the reality is nobody truly knows what might happen in the near future. Hi, I'm Clyde Lewis, and I want to let you know that it's a good idea to plan ahead so you aren't caught off guard. Nothing's more important than having enough food to eat, and we're here to help. We highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's leading emergency preparedness company. They provide long-term emergency food that lasts up to 25 years in storage. When grocery stores run empty or disasters strike, their foods will be there when you need them most. Act now and secure at least a 4-week emergency food kit full of tasty meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. They have dozens of emergency food storage kits to choose from, along with a variety of other survival products. If the government tells you not to go out, you can have the peace of mind that comes from being prepared. After you order from My Patriot Supply, your food will arrive discreetly at your doorstep. Prepare today, because time is short. Go to preparewithgroundzero.com. That's preparewithgroundzero.com. Channel Weird, we're back with Smiles Lewis. And the first few minutes of this conversation has already got me just really floored here because, really deep and meaningful discussion on the paranormal with Smiles Lewis today. And, I was thinking about what you were saying with regard to something surrounding us, whether it be aliens or something else, some power, and how our, rulers rule from the shadows and all that other stuff. I once did a show where I talked about the Troxler effect. And I learned about it after I had my eyes checked because I saw something in my eye that appeared to look like the angel of death. And what it was a floater, actually. But it was so immense on my eye that it looked like the angel of death. It looked like a big black figure appearing before my eye. And when I went and had my eyes checked, I had a hallucination happen where I felt like I was standing in front of a cabin with a white fence and flowers, and it was right there in the office. And it was almost like a Philip K. Dick moment, where, of course, Valis happened, where he sees the he sees the pink and all that. And I felt like that I was having one of those moments, and I wanted to look into it, and it was called the Troxler effect, where there are things that are around you that you tune out because your brain is fixated on other things. It's like, every day we put on our socks, we wear our socks, but as the day goes on, we don't think about wearing our socks because we just tune out the fact that we've got socks on, or we tune out the fact that we have our shoes on. And when you started talking about in the last segment we did, I started thinking about something like second Genesis, where there was the theory that simultaneously there was another Genesis, and that eventually over time we ignored those beings that were in the second Genesis, that we feel because of our sophistication and our arrogance and hubris, we tend to think of ourselves as superior, and so we don't pay attention to things like insects or bacteria or any of those smaller creatures that make up this planet. And so we may even be tuning out what would be seen as aliens or UFOs because of the fact that we're so used to having them around. And then every once in a while, something brilliant or spectacular comes through, and it's like the ultra terrestrial idea or the crypto terrestrial idea, where they're not necessarily from space, but they're simultaneously happening in a dimension nearby, or they get through. What are your thoughts on that?
I will cite John Keel yet again. His idea of the super spectrum, and the things that we see, we only see when they pass through that very small part of the spectrum that we're able to perceive with these sense organs, or with other technologies that we create, discover, and invent. I think that is the key to understanding all sorts of strange phenomena, because until you realize just how much we are each all living inside of our own hallucination, perception is hallucination, and it's very convincing, and we're swimming in an ocean of information, and this apparatus tries to sort it all out, and it becomes habituated into just observing the things that it needs to observe. And there's all sorts of descriptions of hallucinations that people have had where something changes because their brain just sees what it thinks it's normally going to see, and it wasn't that way, and they go back and check, and sure enough, it's actually much different than they for a brief moment perceived as being some normal thing. Or and it gets to, my wife and I were just having this discussion about, I think it was either Dirk Gently or one of the other books by the author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this idea of a flying saucer could land, and people will freak out, won't they? And like, no. Most people, they're so habituated to just seeing what they expect to see. They're not going to see something so out of the ordinary.
Right. It's like exactly how it's happening right now. They're releasing all these information about UAPs and UFOs, the military. They've got their own office. Excuse me. They have their own office. They have everything going on. And people they're just going about their business. They don't pay attention to what the government's been saying about UFOs. They just haven't, really.
And I recall a conversation I had with a very skeptical physicist friend who's since passed on. But when I was talking about this very idea of ultra-terrestrials, crypto-terrestrials, and beings that we might not be able to perceive. He was like, oh yeah, that's like the left-handed molecule. And I did not really know what he was talking about. And he explained it to me, and how, everything in our neck of the universe is one-handed, one-sided generation evolutionary molecule. I'm going to probably not do this idea justice, but the basic fact was, here was this very rational, skeptical scientist guy going, yeah, there's this probability of this whole other ecosystem that would be completely evolved differently than us, that we likely would not be able to perceive. And I think that gets at the heart of this, that there could very well be something here with us, and it doesn't have to be couched in terms of interdimensional, which is obviously something that people knee-jerk use as a descriptor. But there's just so many different ways that there could be something here with us that we wouldn't perceive,
Right.
or unless we're really know how to look for it. And that's something that's come out of exactly what you're referencing, that all the UAP campaign that's emerged post late 2017 with the revelation of the Pentagon UFO programs and related subprograms. And that is this idea that all these military apparatus that had been outfitted with these new types of sensors and detectors are seeing these things all the time, and that's suddenly like, oh, they were there all along probably, but now we're suddenly catching them on all these sensor arrays. Now I'm pretty skeptical, or I have very paranoid suspicions about that whole campaign and the revelation of that Pentagon program. And I should also probably at some point add that the views expressed by this guy here do not necessarily reflect those of the nonprofit that I represent. But I as much as I think this Lou Elizondo guy and the people that Tom DeLonge brought out through the To the Stars Academy and where it's all going since then, I think there's a lot of really interesting people there, and with interesting backgrounds. And
I call it the UFO monopoly, and the reason why is because they don't want to talk to a Fortean. I've had practically all of the military personnel that witnessed the Tic Tacs, all of them, except I've not had Lou on the show, nor have I had some others that would be involved. And I think it's because they don't want to hear the hard questions, really. I mean, I think they want us all to kind of like accept the fact that what's going on here is a extraterrestrial encounter or an incursion. I'd like to believe that it's extraterrestrial encounter incursion, but I have a hard time believing that they're not giving us. I don't think they're giving us the entire story. We do know of exotic weapons and things being used by China and Russia. And yes, we have new materials now that are picking up things we didn't normally pick up on. Digital cameras are now catching UFOs, or catching ghosts and other anomalies. And who knows, maybe we'll have cameras that are going to be able to pick up things immediately without even, every time people take a picture, you see something wandering around like somebody's dead cat. But it's something that as we evolve and as electronics evolve and technology evolves, we're going to find, as you say, it's like some electromagnetic soup that we're in. And every once in a while, things get in and go out. It's kind of like, I know Robert Anton Wilson, again, he said, we have constructed this matrix of protection. We've said our minds have created this. And then every once in a while, something breaks through the network that scares us, or it doesn't belong there. And immediately we start religions, or we hide under our beds, that type of thing. And I think that we're on the verge of this. I was just talking about this the other day. When Ronald Reagan spoke with Mikhail Gorbachev in Geneva, they weren't getting along. The whole thing was going to hell. And they're saying this whole meeting about, Russia and the United States back in the 1980s, 36 years ago. And they were just sitting around talking. And, Reagan says, well, I'm an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. And Gorbachev says, oh, really? He says, yeah, I'm really into science fiction and blah, blah. He says, hey, I got a question for you. If we were ever attacked, by aliens, would you guys come save us? And Gorbachev said, sure, I would. And immediately, that was the thing that broke the ice, was the question of, would you save us if we were attacked by aliens? And now here we are going full circle, where we're back to hating the Russians again because of Ukraine. And I wondered if Biden decided to channel Reagan and say, we know something about aliens out there in space. What would you do about this? Would Russia feel the same way again? That's the question I have. Or is that what's next? I mean, we've had, plagues, and we've had war, and a lot of people believe that the next step would be what, an alien invasion, or at least a fake alien invasion, or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that was a large portion of the essay that I wrote for a 2017 anthology collection of UFO essays by a bunch of people, but much more astute writers and researchers than myself. But this idea that has long been around of staging a alien invasion as part of some stratagem to unite humanity against a common foe. And Ronald Reagan, the famous quote that he did at the UN, that was one of 3 different times he said more or less the same thing to a public crowd of, think how quickly our differences would dissolve if we were faced by an outside extraterrestrial threat. And of course, according to Rosen, Carol Rosen, thank you. Her claims about her mentor talking about von Braun talking about the staged escalation of existential threats that would go from terrorism to asteroids to an extraterrestrial threat. And people like Stephen Greer, who I have a whole range of opinions about, but that's one thing that he too has said for quite some time. Of course, he's good friends with Carol, so he's been well versed in that idea. But it's an old idea. There's just so many different people through time who have put forth this same idea of how can we prevent another world. And Vallée was one of those in his 1979 Messengers of Deception book, where he talked about the Martians, which was, I guess, the Americans' term for the British intelligence apparatus, and his suspicion that this magnificent allied intelligence operation that defeated the Axis, or so we're told, was what it wouldn't just be disbanded, and could it have been reworked in such a way as to work towards this kind of a stratagem, a grand deception stratagem. And
we're going to take a break. Let's hold that for a minute, because this is a very important topic that, for some reason, since the I guess the FOIA documents that were released by the Pentagon, recently released by the Pentagon, and then of course the other documents. And I'm thinking, because I swarm around in the opinions of my audience, and they're talking about the possibility of the next step. I mean, because they've talked about COVID-19 being the alien moment that we've ignored, and of course now we're at war, and then of course we have the refugee programs and all these things happening, which are, again, metaphorically like aliens invading. We'll be back with more with Smiles Lewis right here on Channel Weird. Don't go away. Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. With the rise of the cancel culture and an increase in social media censorship, we need to make a big change. So we decided to create a very unique digital platform. It's called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring an interactive social media section with a chat room, videos, audio clips, archived Ground Zero podcasts, documents, books, and magazines. Our news aggregator provides current news relating to many of the topics we cover. We're expanding our research and study groups as well, which presently includes Tracy Twyman, William Cooper, Mae Brussel, and Jim Keith. Also, check out popular podcast Conspirafact with Wes and Bill. Updated apps will be available soon. The monthly subscription for Aftermath is only $10 a month, and if you sign up now for the yearly subscription, it's only $79. You want to hear the shows you love and support Great Talk Radio. Go to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media. Right now, the world couldn't be more chaotic. History shows us what gold does when the world goes crazy. It goes up in value. Right now, we're in unprecedented times. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the devaluation of the U.S. dollar. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against the hyperinflation that's happening right now. So, what can you do to protect yourself? This is what you do. Call my friend Alan Johnson at United Gold Group. He's dedicated to helping people secure their retirement income. He'll help you with gold, silver, and other precious metals and show you how to set up your own self-directed IRA. Safe and secure, United Gold Group makes gold ownership easy and affordable. There couldn't be a better time. Call now and get a Silver American Eagle proof set with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. Again, that's 800-753-8534 or visit unitedgoldgroup.com. On the phone with me is Ronnie from getthetea.com. Hey, Ronnie, it is the tea that makes you go, I know this because I use it. My favorite is pomegranate. What kind of flavors are there to choose from with this wonderful tea?
You can do pomegranate. You can do just the straight, which is real good. And also we have a mint, a peppermint. People really love that one too. And we have a couple new flavors on the way, which I will not discuss yet, but they're coming.
You know, a lot of people don't know that peppermint is a very, very good supplement to keep the stomach happy. It relaxes the intestines, and once again, it makes you feel better because it allows them to move around and get that stuff out of you, that bad stuff out of you.
Absolutely. This is a digest mover. So people have a hard time digesting stuff, or you get something stuck, or maybe you're a real heavy meat eater. The tea is wonderful. That's why it's tagline, the tea that makes you go.
If I want my life to change and get the tea, where do I go to get it?
Getthetea.com. That's getthetea, TEA.com.
Fantastic. It's Channel Weird. Smiles Lewis with us today, and what a great conversation we're having. We were discussing this whole idea of a promulgated alien invasion or incursion. A lot of people believe it's next on the list of things that's going to traumatize us, and it feels that way because of a number of things that have been happening, notably the leaking of documents talking about or confirming the fact that a lot of people who have seen UFOs or have had encounters with CE3s have had burns, they've had nerve problems and other things. And we were discussing, how that just acclimates us for what's next. And, there have been several, like you say, Smiles, there's several, I guess you could say, science fiction stories that have dealt with this. I know there was the theme in The Watchmen, the comic book, where they were going to fake an alien attack. In the movie, it was a nuclear attack to reunite the world. Then there was also Architects of Fear from Outer Limits, where they wanted to biologically enhance a human to make him look more alien, and then he winds up, coming in some strange aircraft that's made by the Air Force. One of the things that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always felt as though that people misinterpret the Carol Rosin statement when she stated, when she talked about the alien threat. She wasn't stating that the alien threat would be fake, or the alien invasion or alien appearance would be fake. She was stating that the threat would be fake, that there would be no threat, that the aliens are not threatening. That, because I know Stephen Greer, and you were saying the same thing that I feel about Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer is one of those that I believe tend to, I guess, confuse what we call normal spirituality with alien spirituality. It's all a spiritual, thing for him. And that's one of the things that I kind of feel all, icky about, because it borders on the line of Heaven's Gate right there. It's like, it's not quite Heaven's Gate, but it could be at any moment. And that's the problem. John Baudrillard once said, he said, the most cynical thing you could do would be to fake the second coming or to fake an alien invasion. And I agree with him. I mean, it'd be very cynical to do something like that because, it'd be easy to do. And a lot of people think, well, they look at Serg Monas and they say, well, how about Bluebeam? And I would say there is no Project Bluebeam. It was just a big theory. Yeah. And the technology exists, yes, but I think it has to be more sophisticated than that. I mean, once you throw up a holographic image of Allah or Buddha or Jesus or even aliens, you got to be able to answer for the aftermath of this. And if there's nothing sophisticated to prove that anything is there, then people will not believe in it.
And I'm glad to hear you say that about Bluebeam. this is it. This is the problem with this idea, and yes, Greer is one of those people who is like a modern contactee who sees in a extraterrestrial alien intelligence, whatever the source of these alien others are, he sees them as, well, if they're so advanced, they're not going to be
Or saviors.
yeah, they're not going to be a danger or an evil influence on us. And yes, that's the whole thing. The biggest criticism of the current DeLong, Lou Elizondo, and this militaristic campaign that's coming out of the revelations about the military's UFO UAP programs is this threat identification aspect. And it's really easy for me as a sometimes too cynical and pessimistic person to just write it off as this is just another military gambit to get more funding and to convince perhaps our foes overseas that we know more than we actually do about the nature of the UFO phenomenon, and that we not only know stuff, but we have stuff, and not just this evidence, but maybe actual technology. But it is this idea of a counterfeit foe really has fascinated me because it is such an old idea, and yes, it's a constant touchstone for covert military ops to imitate paranormal phenomena, to capitalize on the superstitious nature of humanity, and to.
But religions are copying on it too, though. That's the thing that bothers me. You're right about the military, but what's really aggravating is when you have people who have come out and said the great deception is upon us. The aliens are the great deception. And I look at that going, that's kind of counterintuitive, because if we find out there's biological life, like, for example, on Europa, is that a satanic deception? No, it's not. It's science. And the fact that they're looking for technosignatures, I talked with Avi Loeb, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking, not necessarily looking for life, but something that would represent the idea that maybe life existed. And that's why, of course, in Fermi's paradox, we say to ourselves, where are they? Well, they're dead, or they wipe themselves out with nuclear weapons or something. But, just the idea that maybe something was out there, and that maybe, we too were out there at one time, and we fled here and then back to Fort. We're someone else's property.
Yeah.
Somebody created us, and somebody threw us down here and said, okay, you guys are on your own. And so that's the thing, is I think people lose the essence when they're lazy and they say, well, it's just a fake alien threat. There is no threat. Or, you can't do that, because if we are diverse in our attitudes and the way we treat each other, just because they're an advanced civilization doesn't give them a right or any spiritual advancement to say, oh, they don't look at us as like cattle, where they're going to just march us into the spaceships and eat us later. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I think it just comes down to most religions are threatened by the idea of anything that takes the importance of humanity as being the penultimate, or the ultimate in God, godly manifestation. But this is the other aspect of my concerns over the military governmental campaign that seems to have been emerging post 2017 revelation of the Pentagon's UFO program, is there has been this sea change in the ability of mainstream news outlets to discuss this subject, with a reduction in the laughter curtain and the ridicule factor to a large degree. It's kind of creeping back in, but it's always it's always easy to make jokes about it. But the other aspect of this is a religious aspect, in so much as there is a sea change in academia. At least that's my perception of it, and it is being led by people like Jeff Kripal at Rice University in Houston, Texas, and Diana Pasulka out in North Carolina University, and the recent opening of their archives at Rice University, the Archives of the Impossible, and this acknowledgement of the import of this experience, these various anomalous experiences, these encounters.
While we're on that subject, let's talk about your presentation at Rice. What did you do, and what were you presenting there?
So I was there was a number of different main speakers, including several of the donors, Whitley Strieber, Diana Pasulka, Jacques Vallée, and others. But there was a lot of different amazing panel discussions. The panel I was on was specific to archiving the impossible. In 2003, I founded a nonprofit 501c3 organization called Scientific Anomaly Institute, Anomaly Archives. And since 2003, I've, through volunteer efforts of myself and others, sought to preserve materials related to UFOs and the paranormal, whether it be the research materials of those researching these phenomena, or the experiencers themselves and their attempts to document and grapple with these strange experiences. And the panel at Rice University featured the heads of several special collections. There are so many of these collections, and at our website there is a directory of the hundreds of different archives around the world where these kinds of little niche repositories exist. But typically they're in these special collections. They're just a small subset of a much larger institutional library that has no interest in these kinds of materials. They just happen to have like J. Allen Hynek's materials or Stanton Friedman's materials, that sort of thing. But this new archive at Rice University is within the humanities department there, and is part of Jeff Kripal's, who's a religious studies scholar. It's part of his effort to really bring this back into the mainstream, and that is the founding of this archive there that has now Jacques Vallée's materials, Whitley Strieber and Ann Strieber's materials, the research materials of anthropologists, psychedelics enthusiasts such as Stanley Krippner, Edwin May, who I mentioned, the fellow who ran Stargate for the United States military's remote viewing investigation program. But our panel was specific to these other collections. And that's the big difference between my organization and these others, is that our raison d'etre is the strange phenomena. We're not just a university with, oh, we've got this small little special collection over here. That is our main goal, is to amass as much of this material and preserve it.
You are preserving it. You are. I was discussing with you my biggest fear, and that is that when people like me and others that are going to, we have been doing this. I've been doing this for 27 years. You've been doing this since you were a kid. And I often wonder, we just, lose people like Jordan Maxwell, for example. We lost Stanton Friedman. We're losing a lot of people because they're getting older and they're dying off. And there's no one really that, we have been able to gather together to keep those stories going. And it used to be people like Art Bell were the ones that turned us on to these people. Now Art Bell's gone, so we can't have that either. And I'm trying to take that and do that. But we're seeing an evolution here that's losing that Fortean angle. And I'm grateful to people like you that are keeping that Fortean angle, because I think I'm misunderstood. I know that I sound like a believer because I have an authoritarian voice, and I am kind of a believer. But it's like, once again, a professional agnostic, where you're kind of like saying to yourself, yeah, I want to believe it, but I don't know if I can, or I don't know how that feels, with regard to some of my other beliefs. And so you're just exploring it. You're an explorer, and you're wanting to believe, or you're wanting to learn. And people don't want that. They want you to pick a side and stick to the side. You can't. It's too complex.
Yeah. And this is something that I worry about too. I hear too many stories about researchers and writers and experiencers, when they pass away, their family has often no interest or sees no value in the legacy, the absolute historical legacy of their experience, their seeking for answers to these mysteries of human existence. And one of the other amazing panel participants was Klaus Zwaan, who is one of the founders and main energy points behind AFU, the Archives for the Unexplained, formerly Archives for UFO Research in Sweden. This is the largest UFO-oriented archive in the world, but unfortunately, it's in Sweden. And they're doing great work, and they've been around for decades. And they were actually the inspiration for me back in the early 2000s to found the nonprofit that I founded, the Anomaly Archives, was organizations like them. And so I finally got to meet Klaus Zwaan in person for the first time, and he was amazing. the other archivists there were amazing, and we got to go and see behind the scenes of the new Archives of the Impossible there at Rice University. Got to look at some of the thousands of letters that the Strebers received after the publication of Communion, and hear Streber and others describe their own journey and the journey of one of the letter writers. And so this is what gives me hope that whatever machinations there might be by the powers that be, there is still this I think most positive humanistic element that recognizes the import of these phenomena and is not willing to let it just wash away with
Right.
with the sands of time. And we, so there is a growing network of people, I think, that are trying to take these efforts to preserve them.
That excites me. That just really, I mean, that makes me feel good. That's one of the things that, with all the time that I put into it and everything, I'm just wondering, like you say, I mean, I'm dealing with something right now where a former writer, producer, cohort of mine passed away, and there are people now, or family members, as you say, that have no desire to have any of that material out there anymore, because they believe that it killed them or whatever, that it gave them a premature death, and so they don't want any of it to go out. They're suing to keep it from going out, and it's just a mess. And it's because people didn't have any interest in it. They just thought, there was a black sheep child saying something that was just completely bizarre. And I worry that those legacies are going to die off. And I thank you, Smiles, for doing that, putting together these anomalous gatherings and things. It's awesome. We'll be back with more with Smiles Lewis right here on Channel Weird. Don't go away.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
It's all over the news, food shortages and scarcity in the supply chain, and the reality is nobody truly knows what might happen in the near future. Hi, I'm Clyde Lewis, and I want to let you know that it's a good idea to plan ahead so you aren't caught off guard. Nothing's more important than having enough food to eat, and we're here to help. We highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's leading emergency preparedness company. They provide long-term emergency food that lasts up to 25 years in storage. When grocery stores run empty or disasters strike, their foods will be there when you need them most. Act now and secure at least a 4-week emergency food kit full of tasty meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. They have dozens of emergency food storage kits to choose from, along with a variety of other survival products. If the government tells you not to go out, you can have the peace of mind that comes from being prepared. After you order from My Patriot Supply, your food will arrive discreetly at your doorstep. Prepare today, because time is short. Go to preparewithgroundzero.com. That's preparewithgroundzero.com. Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. With the rise of the cancel culture and an increase in social media censorship, we need to make a big change. So we decided to create a very unique digital platform. It's called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring an interactive social media section with a chat room, videos, audio clips, archived Ground Zero podcasts, documents, books, and magazines. Our news aggregator provides current news relating to many of the topics we cover. We're expanding our research and study groups as well, which presently includes Tracy Twyman, William Cooper, Mae Brussel, and Jim Keith. Also, check out popular podcast Conspirafact with Wes and Bill. Updated apps will be available soon. The monthly subscription for Aftermath is only $10 a month, and if you sign up now for the yearly subscription, it's only $79. You want to hear the shows you love and support Great Talk Radio. Go to Aftermath.media. Again, That's aftermath.media.
Welcome back to Channel Weird. I'm Clyde Lewis. Miles Lewis is with us today. What a great conversation we've been having, he and I. It's nice to be able to talk with someone who understands what's going on, and that's one of the things that I also miss too. I mean, you say you've been at it since you were a kid. I've been at it for about 27 years, but the change now is that anyone can come up with an idea and they emotionally pack it with all kinds of other nonsense, and they want you to believe it. And then the minute you say, I don't know if I believe it or not, they immediately freak out on you. The problem I had was back when, we started hearing about QAnon and the phenomenon of QAnon. And I thought to myself, well, okay, what is it? And I realized that it seemed like it was some sort of a social network responsive type of AI. And I said, you're being duped, because everything in it is just crazy. And so now the media gets a hold of this craziness and says it's all conspiracy theory, and you should not listen to conspiracy theorists, and conspiracy theorists are liars. And no, we're not liars. That's why I say it's better to call it parapolitical, because that way you can say that, well, I mean, I always find myself speaking in E prime. It's like I do it without even thinking. I'm saying, well, it appears this. And, you don't speak with the idea of certainty. You speak with the idea of speculation, because anymore, everything is approximated. Everything is speculation. Even COVID-19 was speculation. Everybody's saying, well, COVID-19 is a hoax. Well, no, there is a disease out there, but the hoax is not in the disease. The hoax is in the information you're getting. The hoax is in the misinformation you're getting from the media and from opportunists that want you to get jabbed with a damn shot. I think people have a hard time separating that. They have a hard time separating that when they speak generally like that, and they can't do that, because what it does is it removes the opportunity for discussion. And I think that's what people are trying to do. We want to eliminate the ability of discussion, so we're going to cancel people, or we're going to censor people. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a real danger. I'm pretty much in complete agreement that there has been a demonization of all things conspiracy. We all know that conspiracies exist. There are covert operations and cover-ups all the time, and that this is a very real phenomena. It's part of humanity's history and our everyday life. And it's so easy, unfortunately, for people to demonize entire swaths of people and modes of thought. And I think, again, this agnosticism is a good antidote to that. And Robert Anton Wilson and others' ideas about E prime, and just be willing to say you don't know the answer. I know we often each feel strongly that we have some insight into the way things are and have been and where they're going. And that's not to say that there isn't some truth to those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Those often inform our best attempts at intuiting the nature of reality and how to respond to the darkest things that we encounter in it. It's a very strange time, and I wish
it was an academic type of thing that, where someone like you, who, you have that academic, I guess, aura about you, but the idea that there could be an academic type of study where, like, I could do conspiracy history like the back of my hand. I mean, Ralph Epperson is somebody who taught me how to be that way. Jordan Maxwell is another example of teaching me how to be aware of words and the etymologies and everything of words. And then, of course, we have other people like Jacques Vallée and others. Jacques Vallée is getting older, very old now. Whitley Strieber and others like you talked about. And I'm just thinking there needs to be some sort of academy. I've always thought there needs to be a schooling where if people have an interest in conspiracy history or paranormal histories or anomaly histories, they could take those courses. And so I don't know if that's your effort. Of course, what you did at Rice, and it's amazing to think that perhaps these are the first steps in getting people an education in the history that is rich with anomalous activities.
Well, the phrase that came up repeatedly at the conference is one that Diana Pasulka has kind of brought back, and that is the idea of a visible college as opposed to the invisible college. This idea that scholars had to hide their research and interest in these kinds of subjects because of the establishment's derision and sometimes outright wanting to convert you or burn you at the stake for being such a heretic as to question orthodoxy. And there does seem to now be an increasing possibility of a visible college. And this is something that, again, Jeff Kripal and others through the humanities and religious scholarly studies are trying to put forth. And I will say, I have met so many young people who were students of people like Kripal. It is spreading, and there is a move by Kripal and others to create a new superhumanities, an academic study that accepts these things as part of human experience and not to just be sidelined as anomalous and ridiculed out into obscurity.
Well, I want to be involved. I want to be able to bring these people on my show to talk about my Ground Zero show to talk about these things because, again, there needs to be a legacy. There needs to be a legacy, and there needs to be a way to continue this, and not just limited to a gathering at a UFO conference somewhere in California or Laughlin, Nevada. We got to be able to make this an academic sojourn. We got to be able to get people together that have thoughts and ideas that are well connected to academia. They're well connected to, like you say, the life experience. This is a life experience, and to neglect the life experience or write it off as some hallucination or hoax. People don't know exactly what we bring towards us. People don't know exactly what we project into the ether. And this is something from Carl Jung all the way through Nietzsche and others that have been speaking about this type of thing. It needs to be rediscovered.
I agree wholeheartedly. And again, Jeff Kripal's Authors of the Impossible was the book he wrote that was the inspiration for the creation of the Archives of the Impossible. It may be a slow process, but the bridge is being built, and right. I think we're moving towards a better world through these efforts.
Well worth the effort. Smiles, what an amazing interview today. I am very excited that I was able to meet you and talk with you, and I'm sure that we're going to continue this relationship because, once again, it's nice to be talking with someone who is thinking on the same level and is excited about keeping this legacy going. And so once again, tell us where we can find you online.
My personal website is smileslewis.com, and the nonprofit is anomalyarchives.org. And just doing internet searches for those on your favorite privacy-oriented search engine will bring up the more information about that.
And please do that, because I think what Smiles is doing is amazing. I think it needs to be done. And we're endeavoring to do that as well. But of course, in many ways, whether it be, entertaining on radio and talking about these topics and moving them into the theater of the mind, because they're very important. It is life experience. It's something that people experience. They don't have necessarily an explanation for it, but it's certainly something that they know that they've had happen to them. They know what they're looking at. They know what they're feeling. And I think that's very important. So once again, Smiles, thank you for being on Channel Weird. And guys, we're going to be back next week with another fascinating show. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember that we air at 1 p.m. Pacific time on Saturdays online, and then we air again at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So join us again for Channel Weird. Good day, everybody. Take care.